Back when I first woke up, I started to behave in ways that I had never behaved before in my entire life. I started to expect the extraordinary in everyday experiences. And so one day, when I walked onto this subway train, I noticed someone who was sitting there. He had a very unusual cane. The cane was carved out of wood, and on the top of it, there was a head of what looked like a gray alien. I took this as a sign, and so I walked over to him and decided to sit down and talk with him. He got the cane in Peru. There was an old medicine man or shaman who had actually carved it for him. It definitely didn't look like a store-bought cane. It looked like it was hand-carved, rough, but very beautifully done. And so as I talked with him, I started to ask him questions very openly, expecting that because I had had an extraordinary experience, some of the people I could recognize in the world around me would also be extraordinary. I asked him a question I would never ask a normal person in this world. I asked him if he had ever seen the future or the past. He told me yes, he had. When he told me that, his demeanor entirely changed. It shifted to become a lot more centered and serious. You could tell that the space that he was speaking from was something that he treasured very seriously within himself. I can't remember the rest of the conversation that we had, only that I had met an extraordinary stranger in this new awakening experience that I was having. But he wasn't the only one. This story is what I call the strangers. The second stranger that I met was in the Hotbox Cafe, which is a place where you go and basically smoke marijuana. When I was inside, I met a man who was about my age. He had a similar style of hair. It was brown and slightly messy, but he also shared another characteristic that I have. He had green eyes. My eyes are like a dark shade of green with brown in them a little bit, but his eyes were like this pure olive green. I decided to bring this up in a conversation with him, and so I asked him, "You have green eyes. You know what that means, right?" Expecting that I would tell him my theory about them. But he suddenly responded with wizards, right? I couldn't believe that he just acknowledged exactly what I was about to tell him. It was almost like we were already having a conversation between the two of us that I wasn't privy to. I was kind of stumped. I didn't really know what to say. It was so bizarre that he would have that same idea without me even telling him. Although this is unremarkable in many ways, it started to set up a pattern that I noticed in a lot of my experiences with mysterious strangers that exist in the world around us. The next incident I can remember was at this same cafe. I was there during the day one day, and this African American woman walked in and sat down in front of me. She took out a large cigar, bit off the end of it, and then started to smoke it while sitting next to me. After a little bit, she started talking to me, and the first thing she said was, "I am an ascended master. I am 80 years old." She said the reason why she was younger looking was because she was like using proteins or something like that. I can't really remember what she said. I didn't recognize her. I didn't really know who she was. I just thought this was like insane. This person is not an ascended master. She didn't look like she was 80. She looked probably about 60. I didn't really believe that either. And I thought there's no way that someone is just gonna come into the Hotbox Cafe in the middle of the day just to talk to me, who's really an ascended master. I didn't buy it one bit. Like, I am not that stupid. Flash forward a few years. I am having a garage sale in front of my house, and lo and behold, this same woman shows up on that day. She shows up and buys like several objects. And by this point, I'm already talking to Sarah. Sarah tells me in my mind, that's her. And I'm like, no, it isn't. You have to understand something about Sarah. Sometimes she's like the Oracle in the Matrix. She tells me things that are completely false in order to test me, to train me to think for myself, sometimes to even get me to go in wrong directions so that I play out various negative beliefs and things that I have. This has happened since the very beginning of our interaction with each other. And so I'm always a little bit skeptical when she tells me outright something that seems very extraordinary, because with experience, I know that she's been deceptive in various ways. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't really fully accept it either. I don't really remember the woman from the first part in that cafe. She had basically the same stature and build as that woman, but I couldn't really recall specifically if it was the same person. A little bit later, I was out with my parents, and this time it was close enough in intervals that I could actually remember that this was the same woman. I couldn't really believe it, but I thought, well, since she showed up at the garage sale, maybe she just lives nearby. It's just like a one-off kind of thing. I'm just seeing her. She never acknowledged me. It's not like she remembered me and said hey or something like that. We've passed by each other. She never really said anything whatsoever. There was never a look or nod or anything. It was just blank stares because, once again, she was just a stranger. But that wasn't the only time that this repeating incident happened. After that, I began to see her more frequently. I began to see her again and again and again and again until I started to really believe what Sarah was telling me this time. I started to believe that, yeah, that was the same woman. From that point, I started to notice her very regularly until one day I was sitting at McDonald's and she walked in the door with two of her friends, the same two friends that she had at that garage sale. She was alone the first time in the cafe, but this time she broke away from her friends and walked towards me. She walked right up to my face and she asked me, "So what do you want to know?" I was shocked. I couldn't believe that she was actually acknowledging what Sarah was saying. This woman just came right up to me and asked me this bold-faced. I couldn't believe that something that extraordinary would actually walk into my life and say it. I had no response for her. I had nothing that I could tell her. At that point, I didn't know what to do. Should I ask her if she knew Sarah or something? Apparently Sarah knew who this person was, and after a brief moment, she acknowledged my fear and my resistance to accept the extraordinary nature of what was happening in front of me and walked away. I've seen people in my life the entire time that I've been awakened, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, because there's a lot more story that comes from this, more than I can begin to talk about without this very early introduction. There are strangers that exist, that walk amongst us as ordinary people. They live beside us, they go to work, to school, they're there at parties and gatherings. They might even be more intimately involved in your life than you would ever believe they could be. I don't know who these strangers are, but they are all around us. Do you know who the strangers are? My name is Summerwind. If you like these videos, please like, share, and subscribe. And please answer my question. Do you know who the strangers are? Have a great day.